Okay, welcome to Beyt Kol Israel. Our Torah portion this week is called Shmini, which means the eighth. Just look, if you look at the screen here, a friend of mine sent me this is something they actually created using GPT and ChatGPT and AI. So the Bereans, right? In the Bible it says the Bereans received the message with gladness, but they checked it out in the Bible. So somebody comes into the room where the Bereans are and say, "Great news! This is Christianity. This is right. We're moving to Sabbath to Sunday, celebrating on pagan feast days, eating whatever we want, and behavior doesn't matter anymore." So the Bereans say, "What scroll are you reading from exactly?" Which is the journey that we should be making. When Jeremiah in 16:19 says, "Everything handed down to our fathers is a lie and of no value." It's a hard thing to realize that everything that you were taught from your youth is actually not in the Bible. It's incorrect. And that's one thing that the Bereans are noted for. They checked everything out in the Bible. It's a very common path for people that come into this Messianic movement, that they've been through all different kinds of congregations because they started questioning things that were said in their churches or synagogues. They said, I don't see that written in the Bible anywhere. Because I remember in my youth, I realized that one day that at one time there were actually 3 popes, and all separate. You had the Russian, Greek, and Roman Orthodox, and they were all claiming to be the Holy, Perfect Father. But they had different opinions of one another. So I guess perfection is variable. So I remember reading about that and telling my parents, this isn't right. The Catholic system is wrong, and that was just the beginning of my journey from the age of 10, 8 to 10, somewhere in there. And the journey still continues. Even in our congregation here, we've had many changes over the years. We used to have the Israeli flag up, but that star on there is not the Star of David, it's the Star of Rapha. The symbol of Israel is actually the menorah. It's right in the book of Revelation. And all the old archaeological finds, they don't find the Star of Rapha, they find the menorah as the symbol. And in Amos, it says, he's talking about the people that are doing the incorrect thing among the house of Judah. You carry that Star of Rapha with you. It's on the top of Saturn. It's called a hexagram. But that's just one of many changes. So I just want to put that up, and I thought that was an excellent little meme. So when we talk about this 8th day, let me get over here so I can get rid of this thing. If you think about it, now I know this is the 8th day that the tabernacle gets started, the sacrificial system. Now we're in the chapter 11, 10, 11, and 12 of Leviticus, or Vayikra, which means the called out ones. And this is where the 2 centers of the Torah are, by the way. So there's the spiritual center and the physical center. And we'll get into that in more detail as we go through the readings. But the 8th day, I want to talk about this a bit. In terms of time, the whole Bible, the whole Torah, the whole Old Testament, the whole Bible, in fact, is a week in Messiah's time. So we're actually in the week of the Lord. So when we keep the Sabbath, which is the 7th day, in actuality, what we're doing is rehearsing for the millennium and eventually through eternity, because that's what the 8th day is. Because there's only 7 days in a week, but in the book of Revelation it says time will end. So when time ends at the end of the 7th day, we are told that there's no more need for the sun and the moon for light, for Messiah will be our light. In other words, there's not going to be darkness. There's not going to be this day and night cycle anymore. It'll just be day forever. There'll still be a sequence of events, but we mark time with night and day, and that won't be around anymore. So in that sense, time ends. Now, in physics, if time ends, then matter goes back to energy, because when matter condenses in energy, time grabs hold, and we are within this 4-dimensional limit that we live in, but we will be outside of that limit like the God is. How many dimensions are there? Some say 8, some say 10. Doesn't really matter. We know that there's more. And there's a completely different existence coming, but that happens in the 8th day. And if you notice in the beginning of this reading, there's a sin sacrifice, that the sin has to die. Now, Messiah took on our sin on himself, and he died for us, but ultimately it's Satan who dies in the confessed sins of Israel. Because on Yom Kippur, the high priest lays his hand upon the Azazel, the one completely removed from God, which is Satan, which he is the author of sin, so that is the goat that is not accepted by God. It's completely removed from God. And he reads over him all the sins of Israel. That doesn't mean there are sins. There are confessed sins. And because Satan desires to kill us by getting us to sin and destroying ourselves, but through confession and his death for us, Messiah now transfers those sins back onto Satan, and he dies of the very plan that he tried to kill us with. Just like the Bible says, if an evil man digs a pit for his enemy, he will fall into the pit that he dug for his enemy. That's Satan falling into the pit. It is interesting that in the millennium, he's put into a bottomless pit. And he wants to put us into a pit, but he ends up in the pit. So, yes.
Just to be clear,
yes.
I was kind of playing around with a wrong misunderstanding. So bear with me for a second.
Sure.
So it says in Revelation that we talked about this before, the beast, the false prophet, and Satan will be thrown into the lake of fire for eternity. And I was trying to think, well, is that the pit that they threw him in? But no. Because the pit is going to be destroyed along with
yes.
That's
the grave, the pit.
The universe, everything, that is going to be destroyed along with
at the end of the seventh day, when time ends, very quickly this entire universe that we see will disappear. And as much as we think this universe is gigantic, compared to everything, the existence of God, which is everything, we can't even imagine what beyond our universe is. What is large? Well, compared to God's existence, our universe is like a period at the end of a sentence. And it's just going to go, poof, it's going to be gone.
Well, the pit like he's thrown in a pit for 1,000 years.
Yeah,
I thought, because at one point I thought, well, maybe he can be. Maybe those three are, they can't be destroyed. And the only way I can think about it is maybe they're in that pit, but they are going to be destroyed. So the pit itself, which is the grave, or
yes.
whatever, is destroyed.
Yeah, it's all symbolic. Absolutely. The bottomless pit, what is that? I mean, you can think technically, if you were in the center of the earth, that's a bottomless pit because you have equal gravitational pull all around you, so it really is kind of bottomless. But it's symbolic. They're captured. They are put in prison, so they are removed from influencing the world for 1,000 years. That's what that means. Because at the end, they are released from this pit, and they go to all the people in the world that did not come up during Sukkot. So the Bible is very clear. First, he will send you prophets and teachers. And if that's the message through the millennium of the 12 tribes, the priesthood from the 12 tribes going out to all the world. Like Daryl talked about, the gates that you enter through is this message. And if you respond to this message and join yourself to the house of Israel, that means you've listened to prophets and teachers. And remember, this is God's word going out through people. But if you don't listen to that, then he sends hunters out. Well, that's the evil ones at the end of the millennium release, and they will whisper in people's ears. And since they don't have a relationship of salvation with Messiah, they will listen to Satan. And what do? At the end, it says all the resurrected evil ones, this is the way I understand it, basically circle God's people again in the promised land, the physical promised land, seeking to destroy God and all his people. And that's when time ends, and they just burn up. It's the completion of the promise that says this Egypt that you see dead on the seashore, you will never see again. Well, there's actually 3 of these. When they cross the Red Sea, Egypt dies. Right? When Messiah comes, he kills a 200 million man army. You'll never see that army again. But ultimately, at the very end, he destroys Satan and his entire army, which is the tree of knowledge of good and evil, Satan, with all his attached branches. So the last thing to go into destruction is the root. Now, if you just think in physical terms, even though this is all a spiritual thing, if you were to throw a tree in with the top first, the last thing to go into the fire would be the root, and that's Satan. Because remember, when he cursed that evil tree, he cursed the root. It still looked alive, and then they come back, the next day, and the thing's dead. Because if the root's dead, the tree can't survive. Yeshua is our root, and that root will never, never die. He is the root and the foundation of the tree of life.
Which is the whole point in Daniel when
Nebuchadnezzar.
The tree with the
Bronze band around it.
bronze band around it.
And that stump that remains, that's punished. Israel's being punished, or Nebuchadnezzar in this case, but it also represents Israel. So long as we're still sinning, we're under this judgment of punishment. But ultimately, when we turn and look up to Messiah, all who call on my name will not be disappointed, that tree will sprout again. Because as soon as Nebuchadnezzar looked up, and believe me, he's a godly man, but he became very disobedient. He said, "This Babylon that I built,"
So spiritually, we're still in the stump stage.
Yes, we are in the stump stage.
The tree doesn't grow again until we're resurrected.
That's right. That's when the tree sprouts again. That's a natzer. We sprout up.
About all the time, grass sprouting.
Yep.
Things coming out of the ground. That's coming out of the grave.
Absolutely, coming out of the grave.
The seed's dead. Put it in the ground.
That's why in Job says, "I return to the womb of my mother," because all of us, in terms of even 7,000 years, what's 100 years? It's nothing. Even the people live 950, 980, 979 is the longest. In terms of 7,000 years, it's less than a tenth, it's a seventh of time. It's just a fraction of the time. But most people have lived, died between the ages of 30 and 90.
He put that statement in with when Yeshua was talking to Nicodemus about being born again.
Yes.
Saying, how can one return?
I don't understand these things. How can you be born again from your mother's womb? Well, Yeshua is actually teaching on Job. Job's a really good book. It's almost as good as Hebrews. Joke here. It's a great book. There's a lot of stuff in the book of Job, particularly when it comes to the state of death. Because when he says, "I return to the womb of my mother," he literally is, because when a woman, every food that she eats comes from the dirt. We are made from dust. A woman eats food. All of it comes from the dirt. And that food that she eats forms a person inside her womb. And you come out of the womb. Well, when you die, you turn back. It's that same dust that you are, goes back to the source of all dust, all dirt. And we're born again from that. That's when you're reborn. So when people say you're born again, no, you're not. There's a promise that you will be born again, because everyone's coming out of that dirt again. Some to reward and some to destruction, the second death. You're either born twice and die once, or you're born once and die twice. You have to be reborn in Messiah's form, which is the Adamic form.
Even the ones that are in the millennial kingdom alive, when he shows at the end,
they will change in an instant. Yes.
They still die, but it looks like they're just changed into a different body, but they die and are changed into their
in an instant, in the twinkling of an eye. But everyone has that experience. Now, we don't understand this, but like my wife and I talked about this before she died. He says, "Look, for me, I'm going to miss you, and you're going to be gone for, I don't know, until I die. But for you, at the next instant, for her, she'll be awake." It's like when I fell asleep last night, the next instant, all of a sudden, there's an alarm clock going off,
I wish I could sleep that well.
They're not all like that, but sometimes I have those nights. Now, after Sandy died, it took a while for me to actually, get back in my normal sleep rhythm. And it's been a while now, so I'm starting to get that sleep cycle back. Also, when you get older, your melanin levels drop, and it's harder to go to sleep. If there's stuff going on in your life, you're worrying. Worriers have a hard time going to sleep, because the last thing that calms down is that worry, the worry part in your mind. So we die, and then on the 8th day, the end of the 7th day, we are resurrected to go into eternity. Now, I know 119 Ministries believes that all the righteous are resurrected at the beginning of millennium and all the evil at the end. I have a slightly different viewpoint. I think the bride, or that special group, the Isaiahs and the Moshes, that we call it the bride, although ultimately all of us are married to our Messiah. But that special group, they are the ones that rule with Messiah for 1,000 years, because there's still physical Israel in the physical land.
All right, that brings up a question that I was reading. The ones they gave all are under the altar.
Yes, that's the ones under the
grave,
altar.
Right?
Yes.
They're in the grave waiting.
They're in the grave waiting.
He's not literally talking
No.
to them in the grave. It's a teaching that, okay, they're waiting.
It's a metaphor. Right. And as more and more are being added.
To me, it seems like that's the bride waiting to be resurrected
think that's related to is they speaks about them, and then he goes to the two witnesses, and the two witnesses represent the 144,000, but they represent the last that are going to come in.
Yes.
So that's what he says. Wait till the end.
Right.
Brethren are going to die the way.
I like the way Anthony said when the last blood of the
Last drop of the blood of the bride goes into that cup, then he comes back.
but they're
symbolic.
waiting
They're
for him to
symbolic of
come
one-
to get resurrected. They're waiting to be resurrected.
They're
Yes.
symbolic of the ones that came before,
Yes.
who are already dead.
Right.
But they're not really talking. They're just symbolic.
Right. And there's these two words. Remember, there's the adat and the kahal. Sometimes, to me, the adat means like the bride, that special group, and the adat is all of God's people.
Right.
So that there's that special group that they give everything, and they have that the closest, best relationship to Messiah, and they are the ones that are resurrected at the beginning, because the second death has no effect on them. They're already in the Adamic mode, spiritual mode.
You can see how it could be confusing because you have to know when God's talking metaphorically versus talking literally.
Yes, and all through the Bible, you find out that even today, things that are metaphorical or symbolic, people believe they're literal, and things that are literal, they think are metaphoric.
Right.
And the symbolic will still be manifested in literal,
Yes.
in literal things.
Yeah.
Literal things represent the symbolic.
Well, the physical world we're in is actually teaching us about the spiritual world to come, but this is going away. Just like the whole sacrificial system. Yes, there was a sacrificial system, but it wasn't about dying animals. It's literally teaching about the work of Messiah.
You're saying about the adat, sometimes it's a special group.
Yes.
Sometimes it's a special group after the first resurrection, after the second resurrection, when
The kahal is
everybody's
everyone's resurrected.
Every
Godly people.
No,
The rest of God's people are resurrected at the end. And the proof of that is there are godly people during the millennium that don't die and change until the very end. So that's why I disagree with 119 ministries. I love their teachings, though. I'm not complaining. Just we have different ideas. But logically, you think about if there's still godly people on earth that have yet to die and be resurrected, how can all of God's people be resurrected in the beginning? Because you still have a physical priesthood that has to interact with physical people.
Yeah, they're just to clarify, their understanding is that the people that are alive during the millennium that become believers and died during the millennium or are still alive during the millennium that made it through the tribulation are the ones resurrected.
Yeah.
There's
slight differences, and I have no problem. We could all be wrong.
You read it, he says, when he talks about it, he says in the last, second resurrection, he says, and if their names were not found in the book
Yes.
of life, they're thrown into the lake of fire.
Right.
So just by throwing an if.
And that means that there's two groups being resurrected at the end. It's not a big issue. It's not a salvation issue.
No, it isn't. I just want to clarify on their behalf.
Right, on their behalf.
I believe the bride and then the rest of
Yes.
It makes sense to me that way.
Also, if you look at the way the priesthood is, there's still a Levitical priesthood, but inside of that is the Aaronic family that are allowed in the temple. So in the millennium, you have a group of high priest families that are allowed in the temple, which is the Mount of Olives with Messiah. That's the resurrected bride. Whereas you have the regular Levitical, because remember, we'd be a kingdom of priests. Those are physical Israel in the physical land. So when the people from the nations come up during Sukkot, like they're commanded to do, it's the one feast that they're supposed to keep, because that's the bulls or the sacrifice of obedience of the nations. Then they interact with the physical priesthood. The physical priesthood interacts with the spiritual Adamic priesthood, who have direct access face-to-face with Messiah, because they are allowed in the quote-unquote temple. It's the what?
That's what the cherubim symbolizes.
Cherubim, yeah, cherubim.
Priesthood that's directly in contact.
Yes, the cherubim. Yeah, that's another view, Daryl's view, other people, I think the cherubs or the cherubim, they have multiple symbols. I do believe there's an angelic group or a heavenly group and there's an earthly group, but they're basically the same in the sense that they are the communicators, direct communicators, because there's this heavenly group of heavenly messengers that have direct communication to Messiah, but there's also a group on earth that have that same relationship. It's just limited because of our four-dimensional world, but when they're resurrected, they're just like the angelic host or the heavenly host, because remember Yeshua says that there'll be no giving of taking, no giving of and taking of marriage in eternity, because we will be as the messengers or the stars of heaven. So then that cherubim group, that's all that's left. We are now completely, when we're going to eternity, we are completely connected to Messiah. And that's that 8th day. So again, we're going to get started here. First we'll have some worship music. Oh yeah, sorry, thank you. We should pray. And so Lord Yeshua, as we come here we're discussing things, but we I'm sorry, I forget sometimes, we forget. We need to come before you in prayer. Because you say wherever 2 or more are gathered in your name, you're here. So we need to be respectful. First of all, we need to ask for forgiveness of sins, because that is the divider. We always start this way because we want to offer ourselves as a spotless sacrifice, holy and spotless. And we do that by confessing our sins, because then you cleanse us, you forgive those sins, and we are washed clean of them. Now we can enter your gates with thanksgiving. Thank you, Lord Yeshua, for everything you have provided, past, present, and always will, for all of eternity. You are a provider. That's why we worship you, Lord Yeshua, and you alone. Now we sin, and when we sin, we fail, but we ask for confession, then that restores the relationship. So we come over and over, and we come in your presence and say, thank you, Lord Yeshua, and we worship you and you alone, and we call on that precious promise here on Shabbat. You have knocked at the door, we open up to you. Please, according to your word, teach us, because you said by your own Spirit you teach us all things. And none of this would be possible except that you died for us, so that we can live forever with you. And that's why we give thanks and worship and praise you, Lord Yeshua. And in your holy name we give thanks and pray. Amen. Amen. And that's also why we have some worship music, because music is a spiritual connector. I guess I have to click on here.
Let's go to the dwelling place of our Lord. Come and bow before the Lord our God Jehovah. Every heart that yearns for the chambers of our King, enter in and honor our Lord our God Jehovah. Arise, O Lord, come into your resting place. Your children sing and worship God our King. So arise, O Lord, come into your resting place. Rejoice, we sing, we worship God our King. We worship God our King. Who seek, who thirst for the presence of the Lord, enter in and worship the Lord our God Jehovah. Lift your hands in the sanctuary of our God. Lift your voice, extol the Lord of majesty. So arise, O Lord, come into your resting place. Your children sing and worship God our King. Arise, O Lord, come into your resting place. Rejoice, we sing, we worship God our King. We worship God our King. Arise, O Lord, come into your rest. We worship God. We worship God. We worship God. All the names within me, bless your holy name. Live my life to worship you. Brought me out of darkness to your glorious light. Forever I will sing of your great love. Forever I will sing of your great love. Love to see you glorified, to see you lifted high. I yearn to see all nations bow. It's you alone, Lord Jesus, cause the call is hard. To find your love and everlasting. Find your love and everlasting. Love to see you glorified, to see you lifted high. I yearn to see all nations bow. It's you alone, Lord Jesus, who cause the coldness hard. And find your love and everlasting peace. Find your love and everlasting peace. For your trumpet will sound, and all the heavens will know that the time is finally come. For your bride to take place, and we'll hear the angels sing. They will declare the goodness of the Lord. All the trees and fields will clap their hands. Joy everlasting. Speak of joy. The trumpet sound. All Jerusalem will know the time has finally come. For his bride to take place, and we'll hear the angels, and we'll hear all heaven sing.
Holy.
Holy. Okay, we're in the Torah portion called Shmini 8. But we continue to go through the entire Bible. Now, of course, we're also now counting the days to Pentecost, Shavuot, Feast of Weeks, 50 days. You count 7 Sabbaths, so it's the first Sabbath, 7 days after the sheaf is, after first fruits. So here we are, the first Shabbat. We continue to go through the whole Bible. We started off at Joshua years ago, and now we're into the 6th chapter of Revelation. The New Testament, we're not reading in order, we read the Gospels. Those were all out of the Hebrew. Then we did Acts, which is out of the Greek. And now we're going to go through the 3 remaining portions of the New Testament that have been found in the original Hebrew. First, go through Revelation, which we're doing right now, and then James and Jude. So, Le Hasadot, these secrets. These the secrets, literally. Revelation, full name being the Revelation of Yeshua to John. Verse 6, we're going to read from the Hebrew, taken from the Hebrew, or translated from the Hebrew as well as from the Greek. And I saw that the Lamb opened up one of the seals. These are the 7 seals. And I heard the 4 living creatures saying as one voice, "Come and see." Out of the Greek, and I watched then the Lamb open the one of the 7 seals, and I heard one of the 4 living creatures saying like a sound of thunder, "Come." Essentially the same. Verse 2. And I saw a white horse, and he who sat upon it had in his hand one bow, and unto him was given one crown, and he went to conquer and conquered. And I looked, and behold, out of the Greek it says, I looked, and behold, a white horse. So now you see what hippopotamus, seahorse or water horse, hippo. Yes.
So that's the size, right?
Yes. One crown, yeah. To conquer, and he did conquer. Yes. And the one seated on had a bow, and a crown was given unto him, and he went out conquering. So now you see Nicolations, conqueror of the lady. See these, we can see that these Greek meanings. And in order that he might conquer, and that he should be conquering. Verse 3. And when the second seal was opened, I heard a second living creature say, "Come and see." Out of the Greek it says, and when he opened the second seal, I heard the living creature saying, "Come and see." Now remember, the only one who could open the seals is Messiah himself. Remember, that's out of chapter 5. And another horse, one horse ran out. Oh, sorry, no, these are the 4 horsemen. Correct. Mm-hmm. So this is, no, these are...
so the white horse is not Messiah.
No, it's not Messiah, sorry. It's my mistake. These 4 horses, they go in different directions. They're doing different things, and these colors mean things. Red is communism. What? That's the Pope. Well, now they have no Pope.
But the crown is
It's to rule over the earth. Yeah, because even Rothschild, who is the richest man on earth, one of his titles is the protector of the treasury of the Pope. So white is papacy, red is communism, black is just weights. Yeah, that's the system we have, the commercial system in the world. And then green, chloros, that's Islam.
So Messiah is opening these seals and releasing.
Yes, these are the last.
Evil
yes.
To destroy all of this, the wreak havoc.
Yes, wreak havoc.
Part of the tribulation process.
Yes, this is the book of the tribulation. Now, there's parts of the book of Revelation or Hasadot that talk about the preliminary steps of it, and also talks about history all the way back to the fall of Satan. But essentially, this is the book about the conclusion of all the prophecies are completely fulfilled in this book, and Messiah sets up his eternal kingdom at the very end. So sorry for my mistake. Yeah, this is the one. So now we have these 4 horsemen. Now you have to go to Ezekiel if you really want to know the details of this. Again, we talked about this earlier. Even the rabbis call this the stolen book, and there's 420 quotes right out of the Old Testament, which Christianity says is done away with, which is one of the reasons they don't really give much value to the book of Revelation, because they think they're going to be raptured away. Well, there is no rapture in the first place, and God's people do have to go through tribulation. When they left Egypt, they didn't take a shortcut across, along the Mediterranean coast. No, they had to have a wilderness experience and be tested. This is our time of testing. And for 6,000 years, there's times of testing. Like Brother Anthony says, with no test, there's no testimony. It's the purification process we have to go through. So let's go back here. So one horse, and this is a white horse, and he is now. I believe that the white horse is papacy. I believe that red is communism. I believe that black is the commercial system, and I believe that green is Islam. I'm sure they have other meanings as well, or I may be completely wrong, but this is my understanding. So, and he who sat upon it, he had this bow in his hand. So he's a warrior. I don't think for a minute that the Catholic Church isn't a warrior-based system. I mean, they're Jesuit priests. Shows their statue at the front of their building is a priest cutting the head off of what they think are their enemies. It is interesting that Islam does the same thing. They want to cut the head off their enemies. So you see the white and the green horse are actually connected through this common root of Mary worship, which is Catholicism and also in Islam. Because when they circle the Kaaba, that's a female generative stone that they're circling, not the masculine. I know they say Allah, but they're actually going around I don't want to get into what. Look up what the Kaaba is, what that stone is in there, and you'll realize that they're worshiping the feminine. And he went out and to conquer. So then the next horse says, "Come and see." And there's another horse. Now this is the red horse went out. And he who sat upon it was given to take away peace from the earth, and a great sword was given into his hand. If you look at communism, all the wars we've had recently are quote unquote against communists. I mean, they're fake wars anyway. They're generated. These wars are created to spend money. A lot of people die so that corporations and wealthy people get richer and richer.
Factor into the red and blood spilled from war.
Well, look at every communist regime. When you look at Russia under Stalin, over 40 million people were killed. Under Mao Zedong, they don't know how many died. It's at least 80 million died. Look at the Khmer Rouge in Cambodia. It killed almost everybody in the country. North and South Vietnam, North Korea, they're starving their people to death. They want war, fight, fight, fight. That's why I think the red horse, and also the color of communism is the red flag, right? They all have red, red, red. The Pope's flag is white, has some yellow on, but it's basically a white flag. He wears white clothes. The Muslims put green lights on everything, on their minarets, because they think it scares away demons. The color of Islam, their flags are green. And the commercial system just happens to be black. So anyway, the one on the red horse went out. He who sat upon it was given to take away peace from the earth, and a great sword. From the Greek it says, and another horse, a fiery red horse, Poros, fire, right, came out. It was granted unto the one seated on it to take peace from the earth, and that they would slaughter one another. And a large sword was given in his hand. China and Russia have been fighting it out too. So there's just a constant. They love war. And when he opened the third seal, the third living creature said, "Come and see." And one black horse went out, and he who sat upon it had a pair of scales. This is the commercial system. And we're not talking the scales of justice, the scales of weighing for buying and selling. And he who sat upon it had a pair of scales in his hand. In the Greek it says, when he opened the third seal, I saw a living creature saying, "Come." And I looked, and behold, a black horse. And the one seated on it had a pair of scales in his hands. Same thing. Verse 6, and I heard one voice in the midst of the four living creatures saying, 1 measure of wheat for a two-faced coin, and 3 measures of barley for a living creature, and unto the oil and unto the wine do not damage. And from the Greek, and I heard a voice in the midst of the 4 living creatures saying, 1 quart of wheat for a denarius, and 3 quarts of barley for a denarius, and do not damage the oil and the wine. Oil, spirit, wine is promise. Some people think that this means don't harm the rich, but ultimately God's people are still saved.
Don't harm God.
Yeah. They can harm us physically, but they can't take. Remember in Job, you can do everything, but you can't take his life.
When things come out of the pit, they're not allowed
to harm God's people.
The green thing.
They can kill us physically. They can oppress us, because this is talking about, if you look at a denarius, this is 2 denarius, which is a day's wage. To feed and clothe yourself, to just stay alive, is going to take everything you have. And the more and more I read, inflation. We haven't seen inflation yet. It's what you think is inflation now is nothing compared to what's coming. When the dollar collapses, we're going to be like the Germans were, hauling, wheelbarrows full of food to buy bread. And in the end, it got so bad in Germany after World War I that it was cheaper to burn the money than to buy wood with it, because the wood was more expensive than the money, and the money burned is made out of wood anyway. So this is what we're headed to now. The whole world is, because remember what Kissinger said, from the Committee of 300, Committee of Rome, who wants to divide the world into 10 sections, which is, they're connected to the UN in this process. It says if you control the food, you control the people. If you control the energy, you control the country. If you control the money, you control the world. So this is about controlling the world monetarily. So black is the monetary system. And when the 4th seal was opened, I heard the 4th living creature say, "Come and see." Same thing in the Greek. And I saw one grizzled and dappled horse. And this one who's, there's all kinds of questions about what these things mean. Grizzled and dappled can also mean, these are horses, with spot, they have dappled, which are little circles on them. But in the Greek, you'll see they say chloros, which is green. And this one who sat upon it, his name was the messenger of death. And the valley of Hinnom followed after him, and authority was given unto him to put to death a 4th part of the earth in the sword and the famine and the death of the hand of the living creatures of earth. And out of the Greek it says, "And I looked, and behold, I saw a hippos chloros," horse green, right? And one seated on it was named Death, Thanatos, and Hades, the place of the unseen, which is the grave. This is where we get Hades from. It does not mean some place where after people go after they die if they're bad people. It's the place of the unseen. It's the grave. That's a later teaching from Babylon and from the Greeks about the place of, where people go. But you're just in the grave. And followed after him, and authority is granted unto them over 1/4 of the earth, to kill by the sword, by famine, and by death, and by the wild beasts of the earth. And don't think for one second that the Muslims don't want to kill virtually every living being on earth, because they first say they're going to kill all the Jews, which you're never going to do. Then they're going to kill all the Christians, which is not possible. Then they're going to kill anybody who doesn't believe in Islam. And then they go after each other, because the Sunnis and the Shiites hate each other almost as much as they hate us. Look what's going on in the Middle East and Iraq. I tell you, those Sunnis and Shiites are killing more of each other than they've killed of other people. Muslims have killed far more Muslims than anybody else. And what do they say? What is one of the watchwords of Islam? We love death more than you love life. That's another clue that I think that this is related to Islam. Verse 9, and when he opened the 5th seal, I saw under the temple the souls who were killed because of the holiness of Jehovah and the testimony that they had. So now we talk about all of time.
Right.
This is all of time.
Waiting to be resurrected.
The bride, yeah. So this is a metaphor. And when he opened the 5th seal, I saw under the altar the souls of the ones who had been slain because of the word of God and because of the testimony which they had. That's out of the Greek. Verse 10, and they cried out in a great voice and said, now people in the grave can't cry out, so this is clearly a teaching. It's not what is being taught here. That all the ones who've given everything, we're talking from Moses, Elijah, Jeremiah, who spent years in a pit, cut Elijah in half, Paul, the disciples, John, the ones who gave everything. Lord, the holy and faithful Lord, until when will you judge without avenging our blood from those who dwell upon the earth? Out of the Greek, it says, and they cried out with a loud voice, saying, how long, the holy and the true absolute ruler, will you not judge and avenge our blood from those who live on the earth? Verse 11, and unto every one of them was given garments of white. So this is white represents Torah, represents light, which represents the Adamic resurrected body. And it was said unto them, you must be quiet yet a little while. You're going to be in the grave yet for a while. Out of the Greek, he says, unto each a white robe was given, and it was declared unto them that they should rest. Again, let me not sleep the sleep of the dead. That's Paul from the Psalms. You shall rest a short time until the number of their fellow slaves and their brothers who were about to be killed as they had been were completed also. Verse 12, and I saw and opened the sixth seal, and there were tremors of the earth, and the sun became black, and the moon became red as blood. Now I think this relates to we're going to have this cycle again in 28 and 29 of blood moons, 4 blood moons and 2 complete solar eclipses in a very close proximity to one another. These are very unique and they don't happen very often. But here at the end times, we just had them a few years ago. Now we're going to get them again. It's the closest they've ever been to recurring time-wise ever. And I watched out of the Greek, and when he opened the sixth seal, behold, there was a great earthquake. There was a great earthquake. You need to put a great earthquake in there. And the sun became black as sackcloth and made of hair, and the whole moon became as blood. Again, that's one of the blood moons. Verse 13, and all their hosts withered like a leaf withers from a vine, and like that which withers from a fig tree. And out of the Greek, and the stars of heaven fell to earth as a fig tree throws down its unique figs, unripe figs rather, when it is shaken by a great wind. Now remember, Satan coming down here, because remember, it's going to say in another place, he knows his time is short, 3.5 years. Yeah.
So this happened right after creation.
Yeah, but again, this is happening again toward the end, in the sense that now his whole focus is on this final battle. Because that's what we're preparing for. The tribulation is the final battle between the tree of life and the tree of knowledge of good and evil. Because it's always been a fight with them. But that started in the garden. It actually started in the heavens, but then it came to earth. And when Adam and Eve sinned, now the fight for ruling is here, because now he's limited to this realm. Now, I personally believe he has realm in the entire universe, because they're spiritual beings. But I think what this is saying at the end, they are limited just to the third heaven, the first heaven, our atmosphere. Because this is the final battlefield. And all their mountains, so verse 14, all their mountains, kingdoms, hills, small kingdoms were shaken from their place. And that's what's happening. All the kingdoms that we know are basically going to give their control to this one beastly system, governmental system, who has a leader, has the fullness of Satan in him. So that's, again, the anti-Messiah. Just like Judas, when Yeshua dipped the sop, then Satan entered fully into Judas. Back in the garden, the serpent, that human being in the flesh, he allowed the fullness of Satan into him. So when he was speaking to Eve, it was actually Satan speaking through this person to Eve. So again, we have 3. 1, 2, 3. We have 3 anti-messiahs, and this is the third and final one. Out of the Greek in 14, and the heaven departed as a scroll that was rolled up, and every mountain and island was moved from their place. So, because at the end of 5 months, right? This is Messiah about to come. And the kings of the earth and the rulers and and this is verse 15, the rulers and the rich and the officers and the slaves and the free hid in caves and rocks and holes of the dust. So we've had 5 months of darkness. This is kind of a precursor to being told in more detail later. The pit, something hits, a pit opens up, these creatures come out, the demonic creatures. Well, we have 5 months of darkness. So the sky opens up. This is Yom Teruah, a day of alarm. That's what this is describing here. All the mountains and hills were shaken. The heaven, in the Greek it's a little bit more detailed. They added this. And the heaven departed as a scroll. So when a scroll rolls up, so now we see the bright one, Messiah, the bright light tearing through space and time. Now we have these 10 days from Yom Teruah, the day of alarm, till he lands on the Mount of Olives and destroys the 200 million man army. So now in verse 15, it's telling us the kings of the earth and everybody, slaves, all the people who don't believe in him. See, they are fleeing from him, hiding in rocks and holes in the dust. In the Greek, it says, and the kings of the earth and the most important people, so the military leaders, the rich and the powerful, and every slave and free person hid themselves in the caves and among rocks of the mountains. But we know our salvation is nigh. And they said, this is verse 16, they said unto the mountains and the rocks, fall upon us and hide at us because of the appearance of him who sits upon the throne and because of the wrath of the Lamb. Clearly, this is the return of Messiah. Remember, he told his disciples, when he leaves, the messenger standing next to him, why are you looking up? He will return in the same manner that he left, coming from heaven down to earth, and every eye will see him. So if you have 10 days of awe from Yom Teruah, day of alarm, till Yom Kippur when he comes, the earth keeps rotating. So everyone on earth is going to see him tearing through space and time. It says planets and stars are moving out of the way, at the brightness of his coming. The Greek, it says, and they said to the mountains and the rocks, fall on us and hide us from the face of the one who's seated on the throne and from the wrath of the Lamb. Verse 17, for the day of his burning wrath has come, and who is able to stand before him? In the Greek, he says, for the day of his great wrath has come, and who is able to stand? Same thing. And that's it. Well, who is able to stand before Messiah? Those that are his.
Right.
And the ones that are not will be eventually ashes. But Malachi, we will skip out of the stalls like calves, and the wicked will be ashes below our feet. So this is a teaching on that system, on what's coming. It's not literal, it is symbolic. There's no horses coming, flying through the air. No, those horses riding over the earth. It's symbolic. Because horse, by the way, is a transport of war. Because when Messiah came into Jerusalem the first time, he came on a donkey, which is, you're just going to go visit. It's an animal piece. You're not coming in war. Donkeys don't make good war animals. They're kind of slow. But horses, swift, until World War II, even in World War II, they were still using horses some.
So basically, it's the aspects of Satan's kingdom, or
Satan's control mechanism are the four horses.
War against the world.
Right, that's the four horses.
That's the four horses. Four aspects of Satan's kingdom.
Because later on they're told for such a time there's these four evil angels, messengers will go out. That's also the four horses. And they go out to the whole world to bring destruction. Going to and fro, destroying. How is he going to control economically? Because the money system will control the whole world. It's, two denarii is to just feed yourself. And religious systems, not godly systems, satanic religious systems, which are Catholicism and Islam, which are linked through Mary worship. That's their common root. Don't think for 1 minute Catholics don't worship Mary, because the last pope, I don't know, they had so many popes here recently, semi-popes and half-popes and real popes. By the way, the Russian and Greek Orthodox, they went to Cuba a few years ago and they joined together, and they're all under the authority of the Roman Catholic. They agreed that there's still one pope, even though they have their own little systems. They've now come back. We're all together now. All together now. Yeah. So we have popes everywhere. All of them lying. Transubstantiation, we just had that meme. We're going to start worshiping on Sunday. We're going to do Christmas Sunday and Easter instead of the biblical feast, and you do whatever you want, eat whatever you want. It says, what part of the Bible are you reading? What scroll are you reading from?
I saw a Catholic priest on news, and he was talking after the Pope died, and he was talking about how all Christians, the Pope represents everybody. He's the one single man on earth that represents all Christianity. That's why everybody should be interested.
And all the mainline churches, the imams, the rabbis, head rabbis, they all came to the Vatican a few years ago. The Pope even kissed the Quran, and they all shook hands and they all hugged each other. I always forget the guy's name. The guy, Copeland. I have to remember the restaurant, Copeland. Ken Copeland. He says the protest is over. Now, there are still Protestant churches that are still protesting, and they don't connect to that. But he's trying to tell you, because the Catholic Church, by the way, the Pope said the next day, don't think for 1 minute we've joined them. They've come back under our authority. So this is, again, the universal Catholic religious system that is being reestablished through the governmental and Catholic powers. So the four horses represent the military, religious, and economic wars against everybody on earth. And Satan doesn't care who wins. They're all his. It's all his system.
But they're all working together.
All working together. We're going back to an Inquisition. Will it be a Catholic Inquisition or will it be a Muslim Inquisition? It's the same. Is it an economic? Because it says if you don't take the mark of the beast, they'll kill you. Well, that's okay. Who's going to cut your head off? I don't care if it's a priest, an imam, or Chanel with their guillotines. You're still just as dead. But they can kill us physically, but they can't kill us spiritually. That's what that meant. You can't harm the oil and the wine.
And that's what ties in with two witnesses that appear to be dead or are dead
But,
for 3.5 days. When they're resurrected, that's the end of the tribulation.
yes.
And everybody's like, oh,
Well, as Messiah, we're going to find out later when we get to these chapters in a few weeks, as Messiah is coming, when the sky opens up, that's when the bride is resurrected. You read in the Old Testament, who are these? They're flying into the land. That's the bride coming in. It's not all of Israel being resurrected yet. It's just that bride portion. And because they're spiritual, and they join Messiah in the air, not in the third heaven, but in our atmosphere, and they fly to Zion. It's Zion, it's not Israel, Israel's people. And it'll be the greater Middle East. There'll be so many of us, physical and spiritual. Pardon? Yeah, it's the resurrection of two witnesses. Now, I do believe that there's two heads, just like Aaron and Moses represented two went against the high priest and Pharaoh. Because remember, there's the priest of On. He's the high priest on the spiritual side, and you have the physical leader, which is Pharaoh, and you had Moses, which represents the leader, and Aaron, the head of the priesthood, even though it's Levitical, and the two were in conflict with one another, but they represented giant groups of people.
They'll all be resurrected.
Yeah, oh yeah, they're all resurrected. Yeah, so when the two witnesses are resurrected, but so are so it's the entire bride. That's the two trees, because they're people from both houses that have given their lives to Messiah for all these thousands of years. Yes. And that's that group too. Yeah, that is them. So now we'll go into our Torah portions, Torah, half Torah, and Brit Hadashah portions. And then we'll do our Hebrew study, which I promise you is a lot shorter this time. Okay, Vayikra and called, also called Leviticus. Yes, this still applies today, folks. Don't you know, we'll be resurrected, we'll be a kingdom of priests, priests that are what? Joined to him, and that's what Levi means, Levi, to be joined. So those are, because the Levitical system, the ones that were his priesthood until Messiah returned and restored the Melchizedek priesthood. They said, I take the Levites for a while instead of the firstborn, but when Messiah came back, the firstborn spiritually priesthood, and we are born again when we are resurrected, we become his priests forever. So guess what Leviticus is for us? Now we have to remember that God tells us through Paul, the food is for stomach, and the stomach is for food. God is destroying both. So in the Adamic mode, we will not be eating food. So when we talk about kosher here, I know it's a physical description because we are still in physical bodies, but its primacy, its teaching is that what we allow into our spiritual selves, what we will eat spiritually. Remember, you must eat my word and believe in my word and my covenant, eat my flesh, drink my blood. It's not about transubstantiation and cannibalism like the Catholics say they're doing. No, it's about eating his word and believing in his covenant. So kosher here is talking about what we will listen to, what we want to see, what we want to think about and do. What is clean and unclean. And there are two centers. There's a spiritual and physical center here in the center part of the Bible. It's a center of 5 scrolls. So we sin in Genesis, Bereshit. Then we are reintroduced to God through his names in Shemot, Exodus. Then before we start our spiritual journey in the wilderness, and before we are restored, resurrected, that's the book of Deuteronomy, Devarim, just before we go into eternity, we have to pass through this center, the Levitical center, which is like Shechem again, this valley. We have to be called out. We leave Egypt, but we're called out. And this is the rules of the priesthood. We are going to be an eternal kingdom of priests, so it does apply spiritually. And yes, there are certain things we don't do anymore physically, but we do all these things spiritually. And it also depends on what state you are. Are you a man or woman? Are you married, unmarried? Do you have a business, not a business? There's different rules for different people. So it came to pass by Yom HaShmini in the 8th day. Now remember, spiritually, the 8th day is eternity. But now, they've had 7 days of anointing the priesthood. The temple service is now starting. And Moses called to Aaron and to his sons and to the elders of Israel, and he said to Aaron, take a calf from the herd for a sin offering. So now this is a bull or a calf. That's for kings and for nations. From the herd for a sin offering and a ram for a burnt offering. Again, you have to deal with sin first, like we when we start our prayer, we always ask for forgiveness of sins. Then we can offer our burnt offering. And you can't see it unless you're here, but our bulletin shows a person with their flames coming off their hands, or hand raised, and says, Esh Zera, the fire of the seed. Well, we are the resurrected seed. And our worship is fire on the altar. And this offering shall be without blemish, and offer them before Jehovah. Again, sin offering, then the worship, burnt offering. And you shall speak to the sons of Israel, saying, take a male goat for a sin offering, and a calf and a lamb, both a year old, without blemish, for a burnt offering. And an ox and a ram for peace offerings to sacrifice before Jehovah. So once we've done sin offering, worship offering, then our relationship is restored. Then we start thanking him for all the things he's done. That's the peace offering to sacrifice before Jehovah, meal offering mixed with oil. For today, Jehovah appears to you. In the 8th day, we will see him face to face. We see through a glass color darkly. One day we will see him face to face, for we will be as he is. Remember, Aaron has on the white robes. And they brought at what Moshe commanded before the tent of meeting, and all the congregation drew near and stood before Jehovah. And Moses said, this is the thing which Jehovah commanded that you should do. And the glory of Jehovah shall appear to you. Again, his glory, fullness of his glory will be revealed to us on the 8th day, eternity. And Moshe said to Aaron, draw near to the altar, this is the bronze outer altar, and offer at your sin offering and at your burnt offering, and make atonement for yourself and for the people. Now remember, in the book of Hebrews, which I hear is a very good book, Paul says we have a better high priest. He didn't have to do this part because he had no sin on him. He was pure. Well, Jehovah, Yeshua, is pure and holy. But Aaron, because he is a person, has to offer his sin offering and worship offering before he can do the work of priesthood. And make atonement for yourself, and then for the people, and offer at the offering of the people, and make atonement for them as Jehovah commanded. And Aaron drew near to the altar and killed at the calf of the sin offering, which was for himself. And the sons of Aaron presented at the blood to him, and he dipped his finger in the blood and put it on the horns of the altar, and at the blood poured out at the base of the altar. Now this is outside bronze altar. And at the fat, and at the kidneys, and at the cover from the liver for the sin offering, and he burned as incense upon the altar, as Jehovah commanded at Moshe. And at the flesh and at the skin were burned with fire outside the camp. So again, the liver and the kidneys and the fat, that represents the sin. That's the filth, because it's that hard fat that does contain a lot of bad stuff in it. And the liver and the kidneys filter our body. They take the pollution, sin, out of our body. Represents that, but the sacrifice is burnt outside because Messiah died outside the camp. And he killed at the burnt offering, and the sons of Aaron delivered at the blood to him, and he sprinkled on it on the altar round about. And at the burnt offering they delivered to him piece by piece, and at the head, and he burned it as incense upon the altar, and he washed at the innards and the legs and burned them as incense on the altar. And he presented the offering for the people and took at the goat for the sin offering. So now he's cleansed himself, so now he can offer the sin offering for the people. It was for the people, and killed it and offered it for sin like the first. Take some of the blood, put it on the horns of the altar, and the rest of the blood poured around at the base of the altar. Remember, Messiah died and his blood came out all around him. And he presented it the burnt offering and offered it according to the ordinance. And he presented at the meal offering and filled his palm from there and burned it as incense upon the altar beside the burnt offering of the morning. He also killed the ox, and at the ram the sacrifice of peace offerings. Now remember, peace is what? Killing active sin in the community. Because Phineas, when he killed Cosby and Zimri, who were fornicating, and everyone knew it in front, it was a summary judgment. He didn't need to have a trial, caught them in the act. And when he did that, he was given the covenant of peace because he killed active sin within the community. So that's what peace means. We are giving thanks to Messiah because when we're resurrected, there'll be no more sin in us. He has killed sin. Remember, Satan, sin and death are thrown, and the grave are thrown and destroyed in the lake of fire, which was for the people. And the sons of Aaron delivered to him at the blood, which he sprinkled on the altar round about. And at the fat of the ox, of the ram, the fat tail, because the ox, that fat around the base of the tail is also hard fat. and that which covers the innards and the kidneys and the cover of the liver. Now, when it says the cover of the liver, you have to go to the first time it talked about the liver. It talks about the entire lobe of the liver. So when you take the cover of the liver's inside of it. It's not like you pull that off. Yes, you're not supposed to eat liver. It's full of blood. And they put at the fat upon the breast and burned it as incense on the altar. And also, you shouldn't eat the kidneys either. Both of those, they're full of toxins, not good to eat. So they put the fat upon the breast and burned it as incense on the altar, and at the breasts and at the right thigh. Aaron waved for a wave offering before Yehovah as Moshe commanded. And Aaron lifted up at his hands toward the people and blessed them. And he came down from offering the sin offering and the burnt offering and the peace offerings. And Moshe and Aaron went into the tent of meeting, came out and blessed at the people, and the glory of Yehovah appeared to the people. So if you think about the end of time, we will worship God. He will remove sin from our lives. Then we will see him face to face. And there came forth fire from before Yehovah and consumed at the burnt offering and the fat upon the altar. And when all the people saw it, they shouted and fell on their faces, falling forward in worship, not backward in terror. You know, as they fell on their faces, that's worship. But Nadab and Abihu, the sons of Aaron, each took his censer and put fire in it and laid incense on it and offered profane fire before Yehovah, which he had not commanded them. And fire came forth from before Yehovah and devoured at them, and they died before Yehovah. And Moshe said to Aaron, "This is what Yehovah spoke of. I will show myself to be holy to those who come near to me, and before all the people I will be glorified." And Aaron held his peace. Now remember, at this time he's dressed in the full high priest garment. He's representing Messiah. That's why Moses says, you don't say a thing here, because this judgment is correct. If you complain about it, you're saying God did the wrong thing. And Moses called to Mishael and Elzaphan, the sons of Uziel. I love that. My strength is God, the uncle of Aaron, and said to them, "Draw near and carry out your brothers from before the holy place out of the camp." And they drew near and carried them in their coats out of the camp, as Moshe had said. And Moses said to Aaron and to Eleazar and to Itamar, his two remaining sons, right, his sons, "Do not let your hair of your heads go loose, neither tear your clothes, that you do not die, and that he not be angry with all the congregation. But let your brothers, all the house of Israel, bewail at the burning which Jehovah has done. And you shall not go out from the door of the tent of meeting, lest you die. For the anointing of Jehovah is on you." And they did according to all the word of Moses. Because you have to go to last week's Torah portion. This is when the blood was put on their ear, right thumb, and their toe. This is the last thing that happens before the temple worship system is started. Yeah.
The thing that really glares out is here. There's that's a traumatic event.
It is.
And it says, and they did
According to
the word
yes,
of Moses,
which is the word of God.
So they put their own selves on the back burner.
That's right.
What God said.
To be silenced in heaven for half an hour when the wicked are destroyed. Are we going to be happy about it? 2/3 of mankind and 1/3 of all the messengers from the heavens are all going to be destroyed. Won't be happy about it. Be silent. But it's God's judgment. It's correct. And in actuality, people choose to die because they reject God, and God is life. Yeshua says, "I'm the way, the truth, and the life." If you refuse to have a relationship with him, you can't live. Even in Genesis, they become like one of us to know good and evil. That's Satan, right? That's when Adam and Eve sinned. And if they also have access to the tree of life, they'll never die. And sin will go on for all of eternity. So to be removed from Messiah is to choose to not live. In 10:8, Yehovah spoke to Aharon saying, okay, to me, verse 9 on here is an indication of what was going on with Nadab and Abihu. "Drink no wine nor strong drink, you nor at your sons with you, when you go into the tent of meeting, that you do not die. It shall be a statute forever throughout your generations." Now you are allowed to eat food and drink wine, but don't be a glutton and don't be a drunkard. To me, it's an indication they were drunk and they were like, "Hey, that was neat. Let's see that again." Because there was fire, there was an offering made to God, and they said, "No, I want to see that again. That was cool." Well, no, This is a special thing. Yeshua is teaching something by all these events, and you can't go adding to his word, right? If you add to his word or do something extra that is not called for, I will add all the punishments in this that are described in this book, this scroll. So drink no wine nor strong drink when you or your sons with you, when you go into the tent. It shall be a statute forever throughout your generations. That you are to make a distinction. This is the entire Bible. Here's the center of the Bible now, the center of the Torah, between holy and common, and between the unclean and the clean. Notice the reverse order. Holy, not holy, unclean, and clean. So we were holy, became unclean, and then eventually we were going to be cleansed again. That you are to teach at the sons of Israel all the statutes which Jehovah has commanded to them by Moses. If you think this doesn't apply now, remember in Malachi, before the coming and the great and terrible day of Jehovah, it's not, well, we're in the beginning of the millennium, but Messiah is not here yet. Before he returns, return to the Torah of Moses and the statutes and ordinances therein, lest Jehovah strike the earth with utter destruction.
People don't return. That's why he's going to strike the earth with utter destruction.
That's right, because they don't. And Moses spoke to Aaron and to Eleazar and to Ithamar, his sons who remained or who were left, take at the meal offering that remains of the offerings of Jehovah made by fire, and eat it without yeast beside the altar, for it is most holy. Holy holies, literally. Most holy. And you shall eat at it in a holy place, because it is your portion and the portion of your sons of the offerings of Jehovah made by fire, for so I am commanded. And at the waved breast and at the heaved thigh you shall eat in a clean place, you and your sons and your daughters with at you, for they are given as your portion and the portion of your sons out of the sacrifice of peace offerings of the sons of Israel. And the heaved thigh and the waved breast they shall bring with the offerings made by fire of the fat to wave it for a wave offering before Jehovah, and it shall be yours and your sons with at you as a portion forever, as Jehovah has commanded. So now we're going to get to the spiritual portion here, spiritual center. And at Moses, Darosh. Okay, the reason I put these arrows here, these are doubled words. And if you can see it here, there's Dalad, Resh, and a Sheen, and both words have that, but the vowel pointing is a little bit different. One is Darosh, and this one is Darash. So the space between them, there's all these doubled words throughout the Bible. I'm just noticing, I think these are backwards here. Darash, Darosh. It got switched. I need to switch these. Okay, 10:16. I'll remember that. It actually should, this is first and this is second, because you read right to left, but I put it left to right because these are left to right. So I think I'll leave it. Because this is the way we read it, so this is the way I put it here, even though in Hebrew we read it the other way around. So there's an equal, if you take all these doubled words, call it wordplay, it's very unique in Hebrew. There's a lot of it, particularly in the Bible. There's an equal number of these, but the actual center is the space between. So what is this? To diligently inquire. So spiritual center of the Torah. So what is our duty? To spiritually inquire, to diligently inquire of everything in our lives, either physical or spiritual. Is it clean or unclean? Or is it the right thing or the wrong thing? Because there's something going on here. Because what did he diligently inquire about? For the goat of the sin offering. And behold, it was burned, and he was angry with Eleazar and with Ithamar, the sons of Aaron, who were left, saying, why have you not eaten at the sin offering in the holy place, seeing it is most holy? And at it he has given to you to bear iniquity of the congregation, to make atonement for them before Jehovah. Because there's this portion that they eat. Behold, its blood was not brought into the inner part of the holy place. You certainly should have eaten it in a holy place, as I commanded. And Aaron spoke to Moses, behold, this day they have offered at their sin offering and at their burnt offering before Jehovah, and such things as these have happened to at me. And if I had eaten the sin offering today, would it have been pleasing in the sight of Jehovah? And when Moses heard that, it was pleasing in his sight. I think what Aaron is saying, I just don't have the right state of mind.
My two sons are just burned up. That's my burnt offering. Kind of.
Yeah.
Nice in my way of looking at it.
Well, I mean, they died because of their sin. I think he's saying, I don't have the right state of mind. If I eat it, I don't think it'd be proper.
I think it's both.
Could be, yeah. And Jehovah spoke to Moses and to Aaron, saying to them, so now we continue. Now we're in chapter 11. This is the kosher chapter. Biblical kosher, not rabbinical. You can have a cheeseburger. Speak to the sons of Israel to say, these are the living things which you may eat among all the beasts that are on the earth. Now, I've said this over and over. Everyone has a kosher list. Because I confront people about, talk to them about kosher, what to eat and what not to eat, because they're eating pigs and shrimp and all this stuff. It says, well, do you eat rats? I says, no. Do you eat dogs? No. Well, that's unclean on your kosher list. I go to the creator who created all these animals, and he says these animals are safe to eat and these animals are not safe to eat. So I'm going to follow God's list. Just from my personal testimony is this, that when we were still living in Santa Barbara, and not because we wanted to get some special prize from God, I got the family together and says, God says we should only eat these things and we shouldn't eat some of the things we've been eating. Let's do what God says. So we stopped eating. The main thing we ate a lot of was some shrimp, but a lot of scallops. Never was a pork eater, but occasionally would eat a BLT, bacon, lettuce, and tomato, but not a lot. But stopped all that stuff. When I went to eat sushi, I no longer eat the uni, which is the sea urchin, which I like the flavor of it. I stopped eating it. I used to have horrible allergies to the point if I had to mow the lawn, I had to take double, even triple doses of antihistamines, quickly mow the lawn, go in and take a shower, and my eyes still almost swell shut. If I picked up a cat, it was misery. I love my cats, but man, to pick up Hershey, particularly our Siamese cat, just drove me into horrible sneezing fits and itching all over. 3 weeks later, I turned to my wife and says, I think my allergies are going away. In the last 40 years, I have taken one antihistamine, and that's because after Katrina, one day when I had just come back to Slidell to start cleaning the house up, the mold was so bad that I had to take one antihistamine, and not since. I have 2 cats in my house. I can hug them. I still get sneezing a bit from the cats because I still have a slight allergy to them. It's the only thing that remains. But none of the pollens bother me. My allergies were so bad when I was in the Air Force in England, I started having blood coming out of my sinuses. It was really bad. And I went to the doctor and did, the scratch test. It looked like a battlefield on the back of my back. He says, you're allergic to everything on earth. I don't know what's going on with you, but all of a sudden you're allergic to everything. And I took antihistamines for years. I don't anymore. I'm healthier now at 72 than I was at 40. Hallelujah. So check it out. Try God out. I'll tell you one thing, shellfish is horrible. It causes arthritis. Pork's bad for your blood. There's a reason God says don't eat these things. It's not because he wants to punish us or limit us. He's trying to teach us to control our physical taste, our physical desires, and that helps us control our spiritual desires. Because if your body is in disorder, it's hard for you to get into spiritual order. So Maslow's hierarchy of needs. If you're sick and coughing and sneezing, it's hard for you to concentrate on anything else except keeping your physical health.
You can't understand the physical thing.
How we understand the spiritual. That's why we talked about this. It's the spiritual center is the first thing that's mentioned, then the physical is coming up. So speak to the sons of Israel. These are the things which you may eat among the beasts that are on the earth, whatever parts of the hoof and is cloven hoofed, and choose the cud among the beasts. At it you may eat. Nevertheless, these you shall not eat of that chew the cud, or of those that part the hoof. At the camel, because it chews the cud, but it does not have a parted hoof. It is unclean to you. Now, Muslims won't eat pigs because they think when Jews die, they're resurrected as pigs. That's why they don't eat pigs. It's not because they're kosher according to God's list. They eat camels. I live there. They eat camels. And at the hyrax, which is a coney, which is kind of like a rabbit, kind of, because he chews the cud, and actually what they do the first time they eat food and they poop, they eat it again. So they digest the food twice. So they don't chew the cud in that sense, but they do eat the food twice. Now cattle with a multiple stomach system, they regurgitate and re-chew it, and then it goes back to 1, 2, 3 in the 4th stomach, and then it goes out. But it does not have a parted hoof. It is unclean to you. And at the hare, which is, used to have the jackrabbits. When they stand up, they get almost 5 feet tall, the big ones. with the top of their ears. The hare, because she chews the cud, same thing, they pass the food through twice. And the cud, but does not part the hoof, it is unclean to you.
Interesting that weird that everything is he except for the hair that says she.
Yeah.
This is weird.
It is, yeah. For she is unclean to you. Now, when I was young and living in Fresno in the Central Valley, California, we used to go, my dad would hunt pheasants. We would go hunting. He would shoot the pheasants and I would shoot the jackrabbits. And before we took them home, because we would eat them, first thing I did was cut them open and pull the skin back. And if there was yellow in there, then I know that they had a fungal disease because they had spread the stuff to try to control the jackrabbit population because, you know, they eat crops. So you couldn't eat them if they had the fungus in them. So they were carriers of, I knew they were carriers of bad stuff. You had to be really careful. Shouldn't eat them anyway. Not good for you. Now, if you look at, I like to watch Bobby Flay. They're constantly cooking. They cook rabbits, every kind of unclean food, and that's always the best stuff. Every now and then they'll have a Jewish cook come on and says, okay, we're going to be kosher today. He says, why don't you try kosher all the time? These people really know what they're doing, you know. It's good food.
A lot of fat Jews.
A lot of happy, well-fed Jews. That's right. And they're not eating this filth. And if they don't want to eat cheeseburger, that's fine. Just don't say God said it. That's, I have no problem. If you want to have two separate kitchens, go for it. But just don't say God requires it. Because people down the road, they've sold their house, but there's an engineer. He and his wife, they had two separate kitchens. Go for it. Yeah. I have one kitchen. I just don't put filth in it. And at the swine, the pig, because he has a parted hoof and is cloven-footed, but he does not chew the cud, he is unclean to you. And I can tell you that when a pig eats anything, it becomes into their flesh. All the toxins, it's part of their flesh within an hour. They're worse now than they've ever been because they have a system that at the base of each leg where it gets rid of the excess toxins. It's constantly, they're trying to clean themselves. And now when they raise them on these cement pits, sometimes those get scarred over. And when they slaughter the pig, there'd be like 1/4 of it or more, 2 quarters, be completely greenish black. So they throw the whole pig out. No, they don't. They just cut off that bad part and you're eating the rest of that filthy thing. And I remember dirty jobs. Yeah. One of the dirty jobs where there's a guy in Las Vegas who was raising pigs and they were being fed the leftover stuff from the casinos. And I mean the filth that these pigs were eating. Nasty, nasty. It is interesting to note the swine, their flesh is very close to human flesh because they use poor pig valves. They even use pig skin to heal burn victims. Of their flesh you shall not eat, and their carcasses you shall not touch. They are unclean to you. When they're dead, you can't deal with them.
That would indicate that
we're pigs. We're unclean. Yeah, we are. Now, you can have a pig. If you want pigs for pets or pigs on your farm, just don't eat them. And when they're dead, you can't touch that. We're not supposed to touch any carcass. But we do. We kill animals, but then you eat, clean before it rots.
You just say clean until evening, right?
Yeah, unclean until evening. That's right. And I'm just telling, again, from personal experience, you'll feel better. Your body will start to heal. There's all kinds of books on this. Inflation Nation is another good one. It talks about the effects of shellfish and all these unclean animals. They are just really bad for you, health-wise. And of course, swine is the cheapest meat, so the poor tend to eat it. Also, I found that after about a month, certainly by 6 weeks, the smell of the things that I used to like now smell disgusting, and my whole taste system changed. It takes a while. Sure.
If you bake a chicken, are you unclean until evening?
Yeah, it's a carcass. Well, to me, yes, we are kind of unclean all the time because remember, before the flood, everything was vegetarian. Everything. I mean, when they put the animals on the ark, they didn't take, other animals to kill. No, everything was vegetarian. And even the tyrannosaurs, the only time they've ever found any fossilized contents of the stomach, it's grass.
So, in reality, we are always...
We're constantly, yes. We're always unclean. And even when you're gutting the animal, you're touching that fat and the kidneys and the liver, the poop and the intestines.
God's got cleansed all the time.
In a lot of ways, I think it's maybe talking about probably a dead carcass.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
Like
dead animal on the side of the road, yeah.
Naturally
Naturally died.
You didn't kill it.
You didn't kill it. But in actuality, we are unclean all the time. It says you shall not eat. Well, it also says if you eat spider, and we're going to get into that, any insects other than grasshoppers and katydids and crickets, which have the hopping leg, anything else is unclean to you. I guarantee you, we're eating insects all the time. It's in your food. There's just no way around it. The most unclean food you can get commercially: peanut butter, chocolate, and ice creams.
I worked in the hot sauce plant for a while when I was laying up in Michigan, and that's one in New Orleans. That's the way they do it in New Orleans. Hot sauce you eat, they got worms, they got maggots. They go and they put the peppers, age them in
Yeah.
the tanks, and they open it up all along top of the tanks. You got all
Oh, that's nasty.
and they take that pepper mash and they put it in the grinder to grind it up.
I'll tell you something else. Look it up on
I don't want to.
when they harvest chocolate, and they put it in a big pile because it also has to age and ferment for a while. And when they go to turn it, mice and rats and bugs come flying out of this, and there's poop and urine in
I
there.
don't want to know. No more.
Average person eats 1.5 spiders a night, little tiny spiders. There's mites all on your, the base of your eyelashes.
Something you really like.
Yeah, tell me something you really like. Yeah, I'll tell you how bad it is. A friend of mine worked in a hot dog factory. He says if I worked in that place one day, he says I'll never eat. After that, I would never eat another hot dog.
I watched one show about food processing. I said never again because I won't eat anything ever again. No, I'm not gonna.
Remember John Panette? Would you like to see the cows? No, I'll see them at McDonald's because he held that lamb in his lap. I knew I'd never eat another lap. Sandy would never eat lamb. Says they're too cute. Yeah, they're not bad. Yeah. So anyway, so don't eat the swine. Of their flesh or their carcasses, don't touch them. Shall not eat their flesh and don't touch their carcasses. And at these you may eat of all that are in the water. Whatever has fins and scales in the water, in the seas and in the rivers, that you may eat. And I remember you, Theo, asked me a couple of years ago, what's the big deal with fins and scales? So I looked it up. It turns out that fish with fins and scales, whatever they eat, the toxins are not absorbed in their flesh, but everything else that doesn't have fins and scales, the toxins go into their flesh. And that's why there are a lot of people becoming pescatarians, just fish eaters. Yeah, Joe Pesky, fish, Joe Fish. Yeah. Because it's the easiest of all the kosher list. It really is the easiest. Now, there's still a lot of parasites in even the clean fish. Yeah. So, it has fins and scales. These at you, all of you in the plural, you may eat them. And all that does not have fins and scales in the seas and in the water and in the rivers, of all that move in the water and all the living creatures that are in the water, they are an abomination. They are to you, an abomination. And you shall detest them. You shall not eat of their flesh, and at their carcasses you shall detest. Whatever has not fins nor scales in the water, that is an abomination to you. And at these you shall detest among the birds. Now this is probably the hardest list, and there's all kinds of discussion. What is a clean bird? Because we're only told what's unclean. These are detest among the birds. They shall not, pardon? We're only told what's unclean. So people think it's like the three-toes chicken, ducks, And at these you shall detest among the birds, they shall not be eaten. These are an abomination. At the eagles, and at the bearded vulture, and the osprey, and at the kite, and the falcon after its kind, and any kind of raven. You know what you call a group of ravens, right? A murder of crows. Yeah. And at the ostrich, and at the screech owl, and at the gull, which are winged rats, seagulls, and any kind of hawk, and the little owl, all hawks, the cormorant, which is a fishing bird, and the great owl, and the horned owl, and the pelican, and the vulture, and the stork, and any kind of heron, the hoopie, and the bat. Now the bat is not a bird, the bat is a rodent. I always wonder why the bat's put in there, because it's a rodent. It's not a bird. It's flying creatures, yeah. And all flying insects that walk on all fours are an abomination to you, yet these you may eat of all the winged creeping things that go on all fours, which have legs above their feet, on which to hop. They have that raised hind leg. Crickets, katydids, locusts, grasshoppers. By the way, you need to cook them well because they are intermediate stage for tapeworms, and you get tapeworms from them. But if you cook them, you'll be okay. That's what John the Immerser lived on, right? Locusts and honey. And of them you may eat. Locust after his kind, and at the katydid after its kind, and at the cricket after its kind, and at the grasshopper after its kind. See, I got the whole list. And I've actually had grasshoppers. There was in the 60s, there was kind of a fad. I remember Kasner's, Jewish guy, right, had a drugstore, and for a while he was selling chocolate-covered locusts and ants. I never ate the ants, but the crickets and grasshoppers are actually quite good. But all the winged creeping things which have 4 feet are an abomination to you. By these you will become unclean. Whoever touches the carcass of them shall be unclean until evening. Now that's the next day, the new day, right? Which is sundown, right? And whoever carries any part of their carcasses shall wash his clothes and be unclean until evening. Every beast which parts the hoof and is not cloven-footed, nor chews the cud, is unclean to you. Everyone who touches them shall be unclean. Now it's the carcass, because even God rides on a horse.
Now, how many carcasses do we touch, right?
It's constant. I'm constantly washing my hands. There's a mosquito or something else, and I have to go wash my hands. I mean, they're filthy. They're filthy. By the way, rodents, if you eat rodents, there are bacteria in rodents that specifically only activate against us as soon as you eat them. And, God, in Asia, they eat rats all the time. Every beast with parts of the hoof is not cloven-footed, that the carcass is unclean to you. Because you can, I love horses. Been riding and training horses almost my entire life. Dogs, yeah, dogs, cats, praying mantises, and one time I've had several times where a dragonfly will land on my finger. They're neat, man. And I love the way, praying mantis with that articulating head. But even the dragonflies, they're the most successful hunters. Their hunt success rate is almost 90%, better than any other hunter on the earth. They're incredible flyers. And if you look at their wings, there's a tiny little black spots in their wings. They're actually weights. So it makes them able to fly. If they didn't have those, their wings wouldn't flap properly. Big Bang. No, God created them. So whatever goes on its paws, any man or a beast which has all 4, they are unclean to you. Whoever touches their carcass shall be unclean until evening. And he who carries at their carcass shall wash his clothes and be unclean until evening. They are unclean to you. These are they which are unclean to you among the creeping things that creep on the earth: the weasel and the mouse and any kind of lizard, great lizard, the gecko, the land crocodile, the lizard, and the sand lizard, and the chameleon, basically all reptiles. These are they which are unclean to you among all that creep. Whatever touches them that are dead, they shall be unclean until evening. And whatever any of them falls, and on whatever any of them falls when they are dead, it shall be unclean. Whether it is any kind of vessel of wood or clothing or skin or sack, whatever vessel it is that which any work is done, it must be put in water, and it shall be unclean until evening. Then it shall be clean. And every earthen vessel, now we're talking, it's not unglazed, so it's absorbed. It's just a raw cooked earthen vessel, because it absorbs any liquids. Every earthen vessel into which any of them falls, all that is in it shall be unclean, and that you shall break it. And you have to break it, because you can't wash that stuff that's absorbed into the fired clay. All food which may be eaten, that on which water comes, shall be unclean, and all drink that may be drunk in every such vessel shall be unclean, if something falls in it. And everything whereupon part of their carcass falls shall be unclean, whether oven or range or pots. It shall be broken in pieces. They are unclean and shall be unclean to you. Now remember, these are earthen, non-glazed structures. Their ovens were just, so if a rat got in there and died, you had to break it up. Never clean it. Nevertheless, a spring or a cistern in which water is gathered shall be clean, because there's always outflow, but that which touches their carcass shall be unclean. So the water that has been touched by the unclean thing, but if you remove them, the water that comes out after that is clean, because it's not in the source. If part of their carcass falls on any sowing seed, which is to be sown, it is clean. But if water is put on the seed and part of the carcass falls on, it is unclean to you, because now water activates the seed and it opens up a bit, so now the filth goes into it, but a dried seed, it doesn't affect it. If any beast of which you may eat dies, he who touches its carcass shall be unclean until evening. There's your answer. Dies by itself. And he who eats of its carcass shall wash his clothes. This is because you don't know why it died. Right. Could be sick, could have been killed by an animal, hit by a car. If you hit a deer at 50 miles an hour, it's not fast food. It's unclean to you. So even a clean animal, if it doesn't die properly, isn't killed by your hand, you can't eat it. It could be decaying. You don't know how long it's been dead. You don't know whether it has a disease. Yep. Could have been bitten by a snake and has toxin in its flesh. He who eats of its carcass shall wash his clothes and be unclean until evening. He who carries at the carcass shall wash his clothes and be unclean until evening. And every creeping thing that creeps on the earth is an abomination. It shall not be eaten. So now we start in chapter, and this is 1142. This is this physical center of the Torah. What we have here, there's jots and tittles. Dots are dots, but tittles are altered letters or spaced letters or patterns of text. And the center of all these is this vav, which is in the word gahon. So this vav carries the O sound and is made large in the Torah scroll, and the dot is just carrying this O sound. So whatever goes on its belly, physical center of the Torah. This links to 3:14 in Bereshit. That's where the serpent is told because of this, because you allowed the fullness of Satan into you. Now on your belly you shall go. So this is kind of a clue that Satan is the creature on its belly, even though it's the serpent, but Satan caused that being to become a false Messiah, the anti-Messiah. We can't eat snakes. We can't eat Satan's word. Yeah. Spiritually can't. Now remember, the food is for stomach and the stomach is for food, so God is destroying both. So in the kingdom, we're not going to eat food. We're going to eat of God's word. Yeah, and he'll be gone. So as much as that's why the spiritual center is first. This is in our physical lives, we have to discern what is physically clean and unclean to eat. But spiritually, it's what we eat spiritually that really matters, because that's eternal. But remember, Moses says, if you break any of these commandments, God's going to kick you out of the kingdom. So whatever goes on all fours, or whatever has many feet, crawls on its belly, all fours, whatever has many feet, all creeping things that creep on the earth, them you shall not eat, for they are an abomination. You shall not make your souls abominable with any creeping thing that creeps, neither shall you make your souls unclean with them, that you should be defiled thereby. For I am Jehovah, the God of all of you, because it's you in the plural, that's why I say the God of all of you. Sanctify yourselves, separate yourselves. That's what sanctification means. Sanctify yourselves, therefore, and be holy, for I am holy. Neither shall you defile your souls with any kind of creeping thing that moves on the earth. For I am Jehovah, who brought you out of the land of Egypt, which is the first of the 10 commandments. I'm the Lord your God who brought you out of Egypt, to be Elohim, a God of gods to you or for you, and you shall therefore be holy, for I am holy. You shall be holy. When we're resurrected, we will finally be holy. Hallelujah. Till then, it's a constant daily fight. Paul says, the thing I want to do, I don't do, and what I don't want to do, oh, that I do. Who will save me from the body of this death? So he says, you die daily, confess continually. This is the Torah of, see, the instructions of, that's what in this case, the Torah of the beast and of the bird and of every living creature that moves in the water and of every creature that creeps on the earth, to make a distinction between the unclean and the clean, between the living thing to be eaten and the living thing that may not be eaten. So this isn't just mild, this isn't just repetition on God's part. This is the spiritual part, to make a distinction between unclean and clean, spiritual and physical, the living thing which may be eaten and the living thing which may not be eaten. That last sentence in verse 11 is talking about the Dorosh Darash and the Gahon, the belly. Spiritual and physical discernment we have to have. And our Haftorah portion comes from Shmuel Beyt, 2 Samuel 6:1 through 7:17. And David, again gathered together all the chosen men of Israel, 30,000. And David arose and went with all the people who were with him from Baalei Yehuda, to bring up from there at Ark of the God of Gods, Aron Elohim, which is called by Hashem, the name, even Shem Yehovah Tzaviot, the name of Jehovah of hosts, who sits above HaKeruvim. That's in the Holy of Holies, right? So this ark is what they're going to carry, should have carried. And they set at the Ark of Elohim on a new cart and brought it out from the house of Avinadav that was in the hill. And Uzzah, no, it's not Uzziah, just Uzzah, his strength, just strength, and Achio, brotherly, sons of Avinadav, drove at the new cart. It sounds nice, right? It's a brand new cart, man. It's nice. It's like they got the best truck they could get, in terms of the day. Nice, brand new Ford pickup. I mean, Gord doesn't like Fords because he liked Chevy pickup, whatever pickup. Brand new truck. However, it sounds nice, but it's not right. Now, remember, kings are told, you shall write you a Torah that you get from the priest. And if we're a kingdom of priests, that means the priest wrote the Torah. So guess what? We're supposed to write a Torah scroll. That's why this exists, by the way. I said, yeah, I need to write a Torah. So I did, and then all this work comes from that desire to do the right thing. So it sounds nice, but it's the right thing. And they put it in a new cart, and they drove it out of the house of Avinadav, which is in the hill, with the ark of Elohim, and Achio went before the ark. And David and all the house of Israel played before Jehovah with all manner of instruments made of fir wood and harps, with psalteries and with timbrels and with castanets and with cymbals. They are worshiping God. This is no different. I remember my mom used to say, she wasn't a believer, but she says, man, the Catholic churches are beautiful. Yeah, they are beautiful, but they're demonic.
It's interesting that later on, when he carries the ark properly, different set of instruments.
Yes.
Interesting.
And if you notice, these sets of instruments are the same list that Nebuchadnezzar says, when you hear these instruments play, you shall bow down before the statue that I have built, the image of the beast. And when they came to the threshing floor of Nahon, Uzzah put forth his hand to the ark of Elohim and took hold of it, for the oxen stumbled. The cart was rocking around. And the anger of Jehovah was kindled against Uzzah, and Elohim struck him there for his error, and there he died by the ark of Elohim. It's supposed to be carried, and he's not of the part of the Levites that are supposed to carry this. Which you remember Korah and his group, they're supposed to carry this stuff after it's all been packed up. Ignorance of the law is no excuse. I didn't know I couldn't kill my neighbor. I mean, you can't rob a bank? No, you can't. No. And David was displeased because Jehovah had broken forth on Uzzah, and he had called that place Peretz Uzzah, the division or the breach or the dividing away, taking away of, because Peretz means to divide. There's a breach to this day. And that place is called Peretz Uzzah to this day. And David was afraid of it, Jehovah, that day, and he said, how shall the ark of Jehovah come to me? So he knows it's supposed to come to him. He knows it needs to go to the place where it's going to be. But he says, what's wrong here? So David isn't angry at Jehovah. He's confused. He's afraid. Well, guess what? When we are disobedient, we're disconnected from God. The relationship isn't a beneficial one. When we sin, the Torah, the consequences of sin become activated in the Torah. When we are obedient, the description of blessings become available to us. And David would not remove the ark of Jehovah to him from the city of David, and David carried it aside to the house of Obed the Edom the Hittite. So the house of the servant of Red, Obed Edom, the Gittite, the winepress. That's what that name means. And the ark of Jehovah remained in Beyt Obed Edom Hagitti 3 months. 3, perfection, right? And Jehovah blessed Obed Edom and all his house. So this is God showing, by blessing this man and his entire family, that having God in your house and in your presence is a blessing, but you have to do it the right way. There's things that are out of order and we put back in order. And it was told King David, saying, Jehovah has blessed at the house of Obed Edom and all that pertains to him because of the ark of Elohim. And David went and brought forth at the ark of Elohim from the house of Obed Edom into the city of David with joy. And it was so that when those who bore the ark of Jehovah had gone 6 paces, that he sacrificed an ox and a calf. To me, this is something I learned from Anthony, by the way. Monday, Tuesday, Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, 6 days, and then Sabbath is the 7th step there, resting. They rest after 6, sacrifice, worship God. And David danced before Jehovah with all his might. Pardon?
He hears a word that David learned somewhere.
Yes.
The
Where did he learn? Maybe he opened up that Torah scroll. My people perish or punished for lack of knowledge. Don't read the Torah. Even Paul in the New Testament says, look, if there's no Torah, there's no sin. He's not saying there's no knowledge of sin, is what he's saying. So without the Torah, you don't know whether you're doing the right thing or the wrong thing. You need the Torah. Because even in 2 John, it says the definition of sin is anomia, Torahlessness, without Torah. And David danced before Jehovah with all his might. David was girded with a linen ephod, which means that's a high priest garment. He's a Melchizedek high priest above the Levitical high priest. And David and all the house of Israel brought up at the ark of Jehovah with shouting, with the sound of a shofar. The voice of God leads now. Well, where did they get this understanding? Because when they conquered Jericho, the shofar sounded as they were carrying the ark.
So you can also surmise
Yes.
that there was priests involved here.
Yes.
That are blowing the shofar.
Yes. And the ones are carrying it of the tribe.
Of Gahat.
Yeah.
Correct.
Yeah.
See what I'm
The
like.
Kahatis, they are the ones who are supposed to carry this. So now things are done in the right order. It's the same desire, the same King David, the same house of Israel, and now it's a blessing because they're doing it in the way God prescribed. So to Christians, it's not Sunday, Christmas, and Easter. It's Shabbat, it's Passover, it's First Fruits, it's Feast of Weeks, Yom Teruah, Yom Kippur, Sukkot. If you think the Torah is done away with, then why during the millennium do the nations have to come up at Sukkot? Because that's not in the New Testament. And once again, no one in the New Testament was saved by the words of the New Testament. It didn't exist.
Jesus wasn't teaching a New Testament.
No, he was teaching it.
Around.
It wasn't around then. It wasn't like Paul wrote a letter. By the way, I just wrote this letter, so we have to follow these instructions.
Go back 50, 100 years to
Yeah.
talk about it.
You're right. No. And David, all the house of Israel brought up the ark with shouts and singing and sound of the shofar. David was dancing. And it was so as the ark of Jehovah came into the city of David that Michal bat Shaul, that's the daughter of the previous King Saul, who David married, looked out the window and saw at King David leaping and dancing before Jehovah, and she despised him in her heart. And they brought in the ark, because remember, replaced her dad as king. And they brought in the ark of Jehovah and in its place set it in the midst of the tent that David had pitched for it. And David offered burnt offerings and peace offerings before Jehovah. So he has to be a priest to do this. Because remember when Saul did this, when he offered the sacrifice, because Samuel hadn't showed up yet, Samuel says, you're not allowed to do this and you're going to get punished for this.
So he wasn't able to do that. Nathan would have came to him and said,
Yeah,
hey,
you
can't do this.
Right. And even his son, Solomon, he dedicated the whole outer court and sacrificed animals. And he did the blessing on the people, which Aaron is supposed to do, or his descendants, but he's above that Melchizedek priest order. And when David had made an end of offering the burnt offering and the peace offerings, he blessed at the people in the name of Jehovah of hosts, Shem Yehovah Tzavaot. Again, Tzav is the root of that, Jehovah, the commanded ones. If you love me, keep my commandments, then you're his Tzav, Tzavaot, you're his hosts. And he dealt among all the people, even among the whole multitude of Israel, both men and women, to everyone a cake of bread and a portion of flesh is understood, and a cake of raisins. And all the people departed, everyone to his house. And David returned to bless at his household, and Michal bat Shaul came out to meet David and said, how glorious was the king of Israel today, who uncovered himself today in the eyes of the handmaids of his servants, as one of the vain fellows shamelessly uncovers himself. He's just wearing the ephod. It's not. And David said to Michal, it was before Jehovah who chose me above your father and above all his house to appoint at me prince over the people of Jehovah, over Israel, and I will play before Jehovah. And I will yet be more vile than this, and I will be base in my own sight, but of the handmaids of whom you have spoken, they shall honor me. And Michal, the daughter of Shaul, had no child to the day of her death. Cause and effect.
Representation of it, he despised Yeshua.
Yeah.
David's Yeshua.
Yeah. No life in you.
You're going to be destroyed.
Yep, no life in you. And it came to pass when the king lived in his house and Jehovah had given him rest from all his enemies. Now remember, David is the beloved. This is type and shadow of Messiah. And the king said to Nathan, the prophet, see now, I dwell in the house of cedar, but the ark of Elohim dwells within curtains. And Nathan said to the king, go, do all that is in your heart, for Jehovah is with you. And it came to pass the same night that the word of Jehovah came to Nathan, saying, go and tell my bondservant David, thus says Jehovah, shall you build me a house for me to dwell in? For I have not lived in a house since the day that I brought up at the sons of Israel out of Egypt, even to this day, but I have moved around in a tent and in a tabernacle. Now Messiah did come down here and lived in a tent. This is, yeah. But he also wants, how lovely are your tents, O Jacob? Physical, resurrected, your tabernacles, O Israel. It's talking about he came in a tent, but he will live in us. Yes.
So that's why the tabernacle is
That's right. He did come to this earth in a tent, but eventually he will live in us, the living third temple. Yeah. That's why that leads to the Ma Tovu, which is coming up later on. Not in this portion. So yeah, so remember, Messiah is everywhere. This is about Messiah. It's not about David. David is Messiah type. And now when all his enemies are defeated before him, remember, then he will dwell with his bride. Why do we have a millennial rest?
so I can spend that before.
Yes, because if a man has just been married, he does not go to war for a year. Well, the year of the Lord or day of the Lord is that 1,000-year millennium. Satan is put in a prison, put on standby, and he gets to spend time in his new house, in his new vineyard with his new bride for a year, and then he goes to war and defeats Satan. But this is, yes, but I have moved around in a tent when I came onto earth, and when Israel is resurrected, I will be in a tabernacle. Again, the Ma Tovu, how lovely are your tents, O Jacob, thy tabernacles, O Israel. And remember, it was Balaam who said, I see as God sees, I hear as God hears, and I think as God perceives or think as God hears. He who is fallen, I'm doomed because I've rejected God, but he's going to show me. I will see of it, but not partake of it, just like the man at the gate when they were told tomorrow they'll sell a bushel of wheat for just a couple of shekels. He says, oh, God can't do this. And the prophet tells him, you'll see it, but you won't partake of it. They trampled him to death as they...
Like the rich man, too.
The rich man, yeah, he'll see, but he won't partake of it. Satan will see God and his people going into, that they're going to go into glory and then they're destroyed. In all places in which I have walked with all the sons of Israel, spoke I a word with any of the tribes of Israel, whom I commanded to be shepherd of that my people Israel, saying, why have you not built me a house of cedars? And now thus shall you tell my bondservant David, thus says Jehovah Tsavaot, I took you from the sheep pen and from following the sheep, that you should be prince over my people, over Israel. And I have been with you wherever you went, and have cut off at all your enemies. Now this is David the beloved, which is Messiah. I've cut off all your enemies from before you, and I will make you a great name, like the name of the great ones who are on the earth. And I will appoint a place for my people Israel, and will plant them, that they may dwell in their own place and move no more. So this is definitely eternity, millennial into eternity. And the house of wickedness shall not afflict them anymore as at the first. So this can't be within our realm of space and time. Because even at the end of the millennium, there's another battle. This has to be going into eternity. So David, in this case, is the beloved, which is Messiah. Because once your enemies have been made a footstool below you, then he comes back. As from the day that I commanded judges to be over my people Israel, and I will, let's go back here. And I will appoint a place for my people Israel. This is 7:10 again. And I will plant them that they may dwell in their own place and be moved no more. And the sons of wickedness shall not afflict them any more as at the first. And as from the day that I commanded judges to be over my people Israel. And I will cause you to rest from all your enemies. And Jehovah tells you that Jehovah will make you a house. And when your days are fulfilled and you shall sleep with your fathers. Now it's back to David. I will set up your singular seed, that's Messiah, after you. Now, also this means also Solomon, after you, who shall proceed out of your bowels, and I will establish at his kingdom. And this is the eternal kingdom that's talked about, because Solomon, he fails, right? And the house is split after him, so it can't be about Solomon, but Solomon does sit on his throne, because that's a promise he also made. And he shall build a house for my name, and I will establish it the throne of his kingdom forever. So it can't be Solomon. We're the house. We're the tabernacle. House is people. So there's multiple things going on here because remember, David is a king of war, but Solomon, he was a peaceful king. He had a confederate joining of two other kingdoms, Egypt and the Phoenicians, present-day Lebanon, kind of. They joined themselves to the house of Israel. You have to read that the lost tribes of Israel and to understand all this. By the time about when David had this was on his mind for the rest of his life, he was gathering all the materials needed for the plan of the house that was already established by God, because he cleared out a copper mine in present-day Michigan. And there are people here long before Columbus. Solomon ruled the whole world with Egypt and the Phoenicians joining him. And every king, all the kings from all over the earth came to him. Our history is just, everything we're taught about history is wrong. And so I will build a house for my name, and I will establish the throne of his kingdom forever. So it has to be the beloved, right? This is the singular seed. Paul talks about Zaracha, this masculine singular. That singular seed, that's always about Messiah. And I will be his father, and he shall be to me a son, right? The one who rules forever. And if he commit iniquity, which he did not, I will chasten him with the rod of men and with the stripes of the sons of Adam. But he did take all sins upon us. That's why the man died and was beaten, because of our sin, not because of his sin. But my mercy shall not depart from him, as I took it from Shaul, whom I put away before you. Now Shaul desired, who desired to be king that was not king. That's Satan, because the first king of Israel is not Saul. Because Samuel tells the people, here's the king you have chosen. Because they said, we want a king like the Ammonites, and that king's name was Nahash, snake, Satan. Your house and your kingdom shall be made sure unto eternity before you. Your throne shall be established unto eternity. Leolam, Vayed, forever and ever. According to all these words and according to all this vision, so did Nathan speak to David, the beloved.
David, all about Messiah.
Yes. And our renewed Torah portion comes from 10th chapter, 10:1 through 35 of Acts. Now a certain man in Caesarea, Cornelius by name, a centurion of what we call the Italians, devout and one who feared God with all his house, who gave gifts for the needy generously unto the people and prayed unto God continuously. About the 9th hour, this is the same, Messiah died in the 9th hour, right? He clearly saw in a vision the messenger of God, Agalon Theos, so this is Messiah, coming unto him and saying unto him, Cornelius. And he, fastening his eyes on him and being frightened, said, What is it, Lord? And he said unto him, Your prayers and your gifts unto the needy have gone up for memorial before God. And now send men unto Joppa. This is a present-day part of Tel Aviv. It wasn't at that time, but now it's part of Tel Aviv. And get Simon, who is called Petros, Peter. He lodges with one Simon, a tanner, whose house is by the sea. And when the messenger who spoke unto him had departed, Cornelius, I like it means little, he's a little leader, a little horn, and he is a little leader of a small group of people, called 2 of his household servants and a devout soldier of those who waited on him continually. And having explained everything unto them, he sent them unto Joppa. On the next day, as they were on their journey and got close unto the city, Peter, so now here's the timing, as they're approaching the city. Now all of a sudden Peter went up on the housetop to pray at about noon. By the way, tanners, they use dog poop and other things that were really smelly to tan hides, so he was up on the roof to get some clean air. And also Middle Eastern houses, the roof is really nice. When I lived in Saudi, that's where I would just just rest outdoors on there. It's wonderful. And he became hungry and desired to eat. But while they were preparing, he fell into a trance, a vision. And he saw the heavens opened and a certain container descending unto him like a great sheet laid down by 4 corners on the earth. in which were all kinds of four-footed animals of the earth, wild animals, reptiles, birds of the sky. And a voice came unto him, Rise, Peter, kill and eat. But Peter said, No, it's not so, Lord, for I have never eaten anything that is common or unclean. This is after Messiah has gone. They're still keeping biblical kosher. And a voice came again to him a second time, What God has cleansed, you must not call unclean. So now the question is, this vision, what is God cleansing here? He's not cleansing pigs and rabbits and crawfish. And this was done 3 times, and immediately, again, God works in threes, and immediately the vessel was received up into the heavens again. Does God have unclean things in the heavenly? No. It can't be about snakes and mice and spiders. And now while Peter was very perplexed in himself what the vision which he had seen might mean, right? So he knows it's not about food, because God is the same yesterday, today, and forever. He didn't eat anything. He says, and God says, I change not, right? I'm not a man that I should lie. And if he says this is unclean, and the next day he says it's clean, So while he was wondering what this means, behold, the men who were sent by Cornelius, having made inquiry for the house of Simon, stood before the gate and called, asking whether Simon, who was Peter, was lodging therein. In other words, if this is the gate here, they didn't even dare go in. They called from a distance from that outside the front lawn, if you know, part of the house, from the gate, and they called, Is Peter home? Because they knew that Jews considered if any non-Jew even entered into their property, they made the whole place unclean. So the Jews thought that the Italians were unclean. That's who God has cleansed, because Cornelius is a believer, so he is clean. Joseph has a many-colored coat. Doesn't matter what tribe you come from. Rahab and Ruth. Your God will be my God, your people be my people. That's it. You're no longer a Moabite. Yeah. And you're Nebuchadnezzar, yeah. And Rahab and Ruth are in the genealogy of David. So that means they're in the genealogy of Messiah. If you don't believe it, read Matthew's genealogy. And while Peter was pondering the vision, so at this same exact moment, the Spirit said unto him, Behold, 3 men seek you. 3 is a number of perfection or resurrection. Messiah was resurrected on the 3rd day, after 3 days in the grave. But arise, get down, and go with them, doubting nothing, for I have sent them. And Peter went down unto the men and said, Behold, pardon?
That implies he would be doubting.
Yes, that implies he would be doubting. And Peter went down unto the men and said, Behold, I am he whom you seek. Why have you come? And they said, Cornelius, an Italian, a Roman. The Jews did not like the Romans because they were ruling over them, right? They considered them filthy. Remember when the day Messiah was killed? It says the priests, they wanted to go to Pilate, but they didn't dare go into the praetorium because they had not yet had the Passover and didn't want to make themselves unclean by entering their property. So Peter went down, Why have you come? And he said, Cornelius, a centurion, a righteous man, one who fears God and who is well spoken of by all the nation of the Jews, was directed by a holy messenger, to invite you unto his house and to listen unto whatever you say.
And so, one of the blessings of going to Israel, we don't know by just reading this what Caesarea was like.
It was filthy.
But if you've been there,
It's a pagan hellhole.
it is unbelievably
Yeah.
pagan.
Yeah, unbelievable.
It's like amazing.
You remember when Pompeii was destroyed? The street signs were genitalia. I'm trying to be clean here. Everything was sex, everything. There was the murals, everything. It's just all devoted to perversity. And Caesarea is the same way. So he called them in and lodged them. So 10:23. So he called them in and lodged them. Right there, Peter now understands that these people are clean because the whole house of Simon, if they considered them unclean, in their point of view previously until this moment, they have just made the whole house unclean. But God says, no, they're my people. Also, you are my people and so are they. Whoever believes in me, doesn't matter what physical nature you are, it matters what your spiritual nature is, your spiritual genealogy. Besides, these are also Hebrews. An island off the coast of Italy is Sardinia, Prince of Dan. So he called them in and lodged them. And on the next day, Peter arose and went with them, and some of the brothers from Joppa also accompanied him. So they all understand now. And on the next day, when they entered in Caesarea, and Cornelius was waiting for them, having called together his relatives and his near friends, and when it came to pass that Peter entered, Cornelius met him, fell down at his feet, and worshipped him. And Peter says, raised him up, saying, "Stand up. I myself am also a human." Which is a clue all through the Bible. If you worship, if anyone is worshipped and that being does not say, "Don't do that," it's God. And as he talked with him, he went in and found many gathered together. And he said unto them, "You yourselves know how it is an unlawful thing for a man who is a Jew to join himself to come unto one of another tribe. But God has shown me that I should not call any human unholy or unclean." Here in 10:28 is described with that sheet with the animals on it. Had nothing to do with you can eat crawfish now. "Therefore I came to you without complaint, because I know you're clean. When I was sent for, I asked, therefore, why did you send for me?" And Cornelius said, 4 days ago I was fasting until this hour, and at the until the ninth hour, and prayed in my house, and behold, a man stood before me in bright clothing. So we know this is Yeshua. And said, "Cornelius, your prayer is heard, and your gifts unto the needy are remembered in the sight of God. Send therefore unto Joppa, and summon Simon, who is called Peter. He lodges in the house of Simon a tanner by the sea. When he comes, he will speak unto you. Therefore I sent unto you at once, and it was good of you to come. Now therefore we are all here present in the sight of God, or 2 or more gathered in his name, to hear all things that have been commanded you by God." And Peter opened his mouth and said, "Truly I perceive that God does not show favoritism, but in Ponti Ethni, all the nations, all the tribal lines," because this is where we get ethnicity from, tribal lines, "the one fearing him and the one working righteousness, which is belief and being belief and obedient to God, is acceptable, is clean unto him." So it has nothing to do with food.
Ties to Abraham, who
Yes.
he was considered righteous because he believed in God and did what God told him.
Yeah, when he believed God and his promises, it was accounted to him as righteousness. Not his own righteousness, but he had taken on the righteousness of God because he believed in the God of righteousness. Okay. Yeah, I did turn this on. Okay, our first word here is Vav Yod, Hey Yod. The A on the Vav, there's the Shva, which does the Vav and the Yod are one syllable, and the Hey and the Yod are another syllable. It's Va. If there were no Yod, there'd be Va, but with the Yod, it becomes Vi. How we get that long sound in Hebrew is the A bar, the bar of the A sound, and the Yod attached to it. Vi, He. And it came to pass. Okay, the next word is Bet, because it has the dot within the Bet, making it a B sound, a full note A, that bar, into the Yod. Now the Yod has a doggish or dot in it, so it's a doubled sound. They're not two Yods, but it ends and begins the following syllable. Vav now is just carrying an O sound, and into the Mim Sofit, that Mim, so it's Bayom. If there are no dot in there, Bayom, but now it's Bayom. In day. Ha, Hey, A. Now the Shin, because the dot's on the right, and it ends, there's a Shiva under it, so it's the Hey with the A into the Shin is one syllable, but the Shin has a dot in it, so it also begins the sound of the next syllable. So now the next syllable is Shin, Mim with an E into the Yod, and the last syllable is Noon with an E sound and a Yod, so it's Ha, Shemini, the 8th, which is our Torah portion name, the 8th.
Never remember what this next word is, Kara.
Kara. Kara. And he called the name Kara Hashem. Yeah. That's a Kof and a Resh and an Aleph. The Aleph Luza has no vowel under it because the Resh took it. Both the Kof rather, and the Resh have a half note A. It's the bar with that division in the middle, pointer on it. Kara. And there's the next letter word is Mim with an O sound, a Shin. Here we see the Shin again with the half note E. and the A, because it's two dots is a full. This is a full note, but you put the dot in the middle, it divides it. This is a full A, but you put a bar in the middle of it, that's a half note. And if you put the shva, the two dots next to either of those, like over here, that's quarter notes. Again, Hebrew is very musical. Full note, half note, quarter notes on the vowel sounds. So this is mim, o, shin, half note, e into the hey, mo, she, Moses. The lamed with the shval, that's a prefix, and it's sounded by itself. The aleph with an a, the hey with a quarter note a, into the rounded resh with an o, and the nun sofit. You see that it's stretched down. So la aharon to Aaron. Yeah, to Aaron. U, vav, now the vav just has an u, the dot in the middle is an u sound, and the vav, the V is silent, just an u into the lamed, so it's ul. And the vet, because the beit is now a vet because it has no dot in it, half note A, noon, half note A into the yod and the vav, which is three sounds combined together. If there were no vav there, it'd u, la, vanai, but with the vav it becomes ul vanav, his sons, and his sons. U is and, two sons, and to his sons. It's a double prefix. The u is the and, the lamed is the two, and then the root word here is ben, son, benay is sons, and the vav is masculine singular, his sons, and to his sons. Ul, again with the beginning here is the vav with the u, is the u sound into lamed again. That's a and to. Zain, e, kof, there's the shva, so that's a syllable, and the last syllable is noon, full note e into the yod, says ul zikne, elders of. Yeah, zekan or zakan, that's an elder, so elders of. And to elders of. Yo, here's a yod e into the sin, because the dot's on the left on this three-pronged letter, and there's a shava, so the first syllable is yis, then a rounded resh, half note a, aleph carrying the full note e into lamed, Yisrael, Israel. So literally the sentence is, and it came to pass in day 8th, called Moses to Aaron and to his sons and to the elders of Israel. Okay, and we have no physical children here, but Lord Yeshua, we do ask for a blessing upon those, all your sons and all your daughters. May the sons be as Manasseh and Ephraim, and the daughters be as Sarah, Rivka, and Leah. And seal us, Lord Yeshua, all your children, for all through space and time, that we may be forever sealed with you into eternity and see you face to face. And this only comes from the blessing which is from you, Lord Yeshua, and also because you died for us. You died the sin death that was our death sentence, the second death, but no longer has effect on us because you died for us in that place. And the sins that were forgiven, you will put them on Satan and all his, and they will die in not only our confessed sins, but also in their own sins. And that's why we thank and worship you in all things, and we give thanks in your holy name, Yeshua. Amen and amen. And that concludes our service today. So let me know when the